I thank you first off for coming, and secondly, I want to touch on probably the question that if I were a reader or a viewer would want to know is, what the heck is it like to be a congressman? Because you might have known a lot about the role, but how do you really know what it's like to be a congressman until you're a congressman? And you've sort of had a very fast forward acceleration into what that all means. Take a breath. What does it feel like?
So first I want to thank you, Chris, for this opportunity, and it's wonderful to meet in person and to be here. And Camp Life was wonderful. I did have a tour. Your staff is upbeat as I would anticipate, and a well-oiled machine as far as making sure they're talking or have positive news and output of positive news. So that is a testament to the mission that you've put forward, and that's not easy either in this day and age. So I commend you for that approach towards things.
Thank you.
What it's like to be a member of Congress. So you're right. As I have gone through the transition, I was sworn in on January 3rd. We had an insurrection on January 6th. We voted on impeachment there shortly after. We had an inauguration of a new president and a transfer of power. And we were going through a pandemic and an economic crisis. So very early on, what I learned is you have to stay focused. And as quickly as I possibly could, through the transition, is we wanted to make an impact and make sure that we were district-centric and focused on what we could accomplish for the district. And so through all that excitement and through everything that was going on, first and foremost, having a steady, knowledgeable staff was extremely important. We were able to carry over and ask individuals who worked for Congressman Visklowski to stay on with us so we can have a seamless transition. My Chief of Staff, Mark Lopez, brings a great deal of experience, knowledge, and institutional knowledge to the table, and that has helped with the transition. So on every day basis, first, the transition of leaving your family is my family stayed here in Highland, and I go back and forth, and that has gone actually very well. I have a 14-year-old daughter and an 18-year-old daughter, Genevieve and Scarlett. They've adjusted very well. And my wife, who's my high school sweetheart, will be married 25 years this year. She works. We attempt to have her come out to Washington, D.C. when she can, but ultimately she's here all of the time. And that transition is something that's difficult, but we're doing very well with it.
Yeah.
Then the most important thing that I want to communicate is you have to have a love of learning and a curiosity. So every meeting that I have, every conversation that I have, every committee meeting that I'm going to, every vote that we have, I am attempting to learn as much as I possibly can or have command of that issue. And so you're constantly, when you're not working or speaking with people, you are preparing or briefing.
You're reading notes, you're documenting, you're figuring it all out.
That's correct. And so that's one big part of it. You really have to have a thirst for knowledge, and you have to be naturally curious. And you also have to know what your priorities are. Making sure that here in Northwest Indiana, we're protecting the steel industry, talking about the quality of life, talking about the Indiana Dunes as a national park, making sure that we're investing in infrastructure. And very early on, as I mentioned, the economic crisis, along with the pandemic, we were working on the American Rescue Plan and ironing out what's important to our local communities, making sure that we had a national approach towards getting vaccinations in people's arms, making sure that we had the funding for that and the proper rollout. Also, what we did is we ensured that there was direct relief to individuals who had lost their jobs through no control of their own. And we also made sure that communities have resources in order to reinvest in themselves, to make sure that they are prepared for the next level of what might happen in a pandemic, and also for lost revenues that they may have succumbed. So the American Rescue Plan was a large part of the first 6 months. And now what we're transitioning to is the infrastructure bill, or the American Jobs Plan, which is equally important to our area, because what I am focused on there is making sure we have a Buy American provision, that we're using American steel for our roads, our bridges, and our waterways, and our pipes. Everything of our infrastructure that needs to be replaced, we want to make sure that our workers and our economy here in Northwest Indiana is brought along. Disruptions in supply chains have allowed us to notice that we have to focus on or make sure that we have American manufacturing and domestic manufacturing producing the goods that are essential to us.
Yeah.
When it comes to steel, it's a matter of national security. The steel that's produced here in our region is used for ships, for our Navy, used for planes. So it is a matter of national security when it comes to steel. And as you mentioned, domestic manufacturing is extremely important. The chips, for example, China has somewhat of a monopoly on the chips. And when the supply chain is broken, Ford stops making cars.
Yeah.
And when Ford stops making cars, less steel is needed. So not only are we hit with the workers that are at Ford in South Chicago, but also the steel mills are
Yeah.
impacted. So being able to control that or being aware of those supply chains are extremely important. And something that I've said also, and I mean this wholeheartedly, deep in my heart. So on January 6th, we had the insurrection, and I was on the floor, I was present, I was there when that happened. But one of my takeaways from that I truly believe is that what caused the divide in our nation, much of our divide, is that workers and people felt uncertain or left behind. So as we talk about new economies and we talk about different ways of jobs of the future, we have to make sure that we're bringing workers along and that they're able to participate in the economy that we have going forward. And that's why I believe it's so very important to have an infrastructure bill that will bring workers along to close the divide between the wage gaps.
Yep.
And when we do that, I believe you chip away at what we have going on in our nation when we're so divided.